Hello and welcome. My name is Russell, and in today's video, we're going to be walking through the beginning setup of our new project, the Pokedex Chrome Extension. If you're watching this, you're probably inside the Web Dev Kickstarter, and this may be your first real project working with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I want to welcome you. This will be a great project for anybody who is new to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or coding Chrome extensions in general. One of the reasons why I chose this project and building a Chrome extension is because they're actually really cool tools that you can build into Chrome browsers. And ultimately, it's just a website. It uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, vanilla or JavaScript frameworks. If you want to use those, you can build on that as well. But essentially, it's just a website that is rendered in your browser, but the cool thing is they can actually interact with other websites as well as users, obviously, and the development tools inside your browser. So pretty cool what you can do with a Chrome extension. So in today's video, what we're going to do is show off what we're building, how we're actually going to go about that, and the different things that you're going to need to know in order to be prepared to build this project. As well as at the very end of the video, we're going to do some basic setup so that you are prepared for the coming videos where we go through the HTML, the CSS, and then finally the JavaScript to make this thing work for you. So with that, let's get directly into it. I want to show off what the extension is to start out with. It's pretty cool, but it's also pretty simple. And obviously, if you wanted to, I would recommend at the end of this to add some functionality to this, make it your own. And then you can add this project to your portfolio. And this would be a great way to show off not only your web development skills, but also your ability to build Chrome extensions. So with that, this is the Chrome extension. You can see I have it installed on my machine locally. It's called the Pokedex. Every time that you click the Pokedex, it opens a new Pokemon card. You close the window, open it again, and you get a brand new one. Right? And these are randomly generated. Every time that I click one, I get a fresh new one. There's Mr. Mime, and there's plenty of other ones in there. I believe there's about 1,000 different Pokemon that you can go through. So we're going to build this from scratch. There's no copy paste. I'm going to show you all of the code. You're going to work through it with me. So with that, let's get into it. Okay. So we have our Pokedex Chrome extension. Now let's look at the general design of this Chrome extension. So remember, a Chrome extension is basically like a mini browser window. You're basically just building a little miniature website that can be hosted up here on the toolbar. Okay. And so our design is pretty simple, right? It's like a playing card. That's what it's designed to look like a Pokemon card. So let's just sort of start to dissect what we have here. We have the card itself, and then we have the Pokemon name along with its HP, its hit power, an image, right? Like we have a little pixelated image of the actual Pokemon. And then we also have a couple moves of the Pokemon along with some score. I believe this is for like accuracy. And then we have some other stats about this Pokemon, like its attack, its defense, and its speed rating, okay? So pretty straightforward, nothing crazy here, but we do have, kind of a cool looking card that mimics a playing card. So just take a look at those. You can really dig into how these parts are built, and we're obviously going to build each of these things inside of here, but I want you to start taking a look at what you see on the screen and dissecting it, okay? Because this is the first step as a web developer. Typically in a generalized like work scenario, somebody's going to give you a design, right? Something, a Photoshop design, a Figma design, some wireframe, some basic wireframe. And they're going to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Web developer, please build this. Okay. And so they're not going to give you specifications of how much padding there is or margins or what the colors necessarily are. They're just going to give you a design and say, build it. Okay. And so our job as the web developer is to take a design like this, break it down into code, right? In our head, we translate this into code and then represent it on the screen. So the first thing that I like to do whenever I'm looking at a design is start to break down what I see in front of me. And so the next slide, I'm going to show you some of how I start to think about this. Now, I don't typically do this in terms of drawing boxes, but I start to look at things this way in my head. So what I've done here is I already have the finished code that we're gonna build together, and so I just added a little bit of extra CSS to the code so that we could start to see how everything's built. Now, what I did is I just added a border around either container elements or text elements, okay? Because that's really all that we have here. We have a bunch of container elements, a bunch of text elements, and then of course we have one image in the middle. And the purpose of doing this is so that you can start to see where these elements exist. So if we start to look at this card itself, we did this a little bit before, but we have the outermost border, and then we have an inner card. And then inside of there, we basically have a bunch of other containers that are stacked on top of each other. So we have this first one that has a title and the HP, right? That blue represents a container, and then the white is any text element. So we have this title text, this text, and then those are in a container. We have our image, and then we have some other containers here. You can see them nested inside of each other. And that way we can make all these designs that we have, right? If we look back here, we can see sort of where all these borders were up here, but we just highlighted them a little bit more here so we can start to see that. So I want you to start getting an eye like this when you're starting to build websites. You go from a design that somebody hands you to how am I going to break this up into div elements, paragraph elements, heading elements, you name it, so that you can actually build this again, okay? So this is what I typically do, start to sort of look at the design, break it up into pieces, and we're gonna build this over the next few videos through HTML, CSS, and then we'll add the interactivity where we can pull data from an API using JavaScript, so that will be pretty cool. Okay, so at this point, you may be asking, what actually is a Chrome extension? I know that you probably used them before, but you may not understand exactly what it is. And I mentioned in the beginning of this video, essentially a Chrome extension is more or less just a website. And you're going to see in a second why that's the truth, right? It's built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And there's really only one other piece that we need in order to make it a Chrome extension, and that is a special file called manifest.json. We're going to talk about that in a second. But along with that file and your 3 HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, you can upload this into your browser as a Chrome extension and use it just like I am right here, okay? So Chrome extension, just to recap, is basically a website or a web app that can live in your browser and can interact with users, dev tools, other websites, and more. There's a lot you can do there. And again, it's built with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or you could use frameworks to do it and special tools like CSS preprocessors if you wanted to. But in today's video, we're going to do it with the core web technologies, the vanilla everything, make it super simple for you to follow along. So the last thing, which I mentioned, is you need a manifest.json file. And of course, in order to use this on our local machine, we need to enable developer tools in our Chrome extensions. So the way you do that, if you just open your Chrome extensions and go to Manage Extensions, this will open all of your extensions, and in the top corner here, you'll see your developer tools, okay? So you need to enable that, and then we're going to be using this button here, Load Unpacked, to load up our project folder when we're ready to do that, but I'm gonna walk you through that, so don't get ahead of us. All right, so just to give you an overview of what a Chrome extension is, we got some of that here. And the other things that we're going to be using are the Poke API. So this is a free and simple to use REST API for retrieving information related to Pokemon. This is, I believe, open source, and there's a lot of open source contributors. So if you are looking for a way to contribute to something, I'm pretty sure that they're constantly looking for people to help build this database that they have. But it's a pretty cool asset that you can use for testing and learning and building Pokemon apps, right? So we're going to build a simple one today, but you'll see that this API is actually extremely complicated in terms of like how much data you can get. It's not complicated to use. It's actually quite easy, but you can get a lot of data. And so you could definitely build what we build today out into a more complicated project that maybe you interact with other users. some sort of game or something like that. There's all sorts of features built into this API. So if you're really interested, feel free to dig into that. It's a really cool API. We're going to use the most basic form of that because it's really all that we need, but you'll be able to see a lot of the other things that are offered with what we go through. So with that, we're going to use the REST API for retrieving information about Pokemon, and we're going to retrieve that data using simple GET requests using the built-in fetch method. So if you have any familiarity with APIs and RESTful APIs, there's different types of requests that we can make. Today, we're just going to go over, or in this series, we're just going to go over GET requests. They are the most commonly used request. It is for retrieving information from a database. And so you're going to use that one a lot. So it's worthwhile understanding that as well. Okay. And so this is actually a snippet from the code. This is how this is the function we're actually going to use to fetch a Pokemon. But I just want to show you how it works. There's this built-in fetch method in JavaScript, which we're going to use to basically call for Pokemon against this URL string. And then we're going to use that inside of our app. So we'll see how this all works as we get through it. But for now, there's a couple of resources that you need to know about and you need to have ready for this application. So number one is the assets folder that will be linked below this video. You just need that on your machine. We're going to upload that into our project folder in a minute here, but you will need that. So look below for the link to that. The other things that you will want to have open just for your own sake are some resources like the Chrome Extension docs, the Poke API docs, and the MDN web docs are always good to just have open, especially when you're working with new things like JavaScript, HTML, CSS, any web technologies that are new to you, or you need to understand how some methods work, things like that. You definitely want to have that open. And here's where you can go to get those. For the Chrome extension, you're just going to go to developer.chrome.com/docs. And then you can actually, I believe, select extensions. If I just go to docs, I think it shows me more than that. So this is the docs page. And then if I go to extensions, also just for your own sake, anytime that you're using a new technology, it's worthwhile to start where it says get started. You'll usually see that inside the docs. And these are usually tutorials that you can do to understand the very basics of using a new technology. For this video, if you want a little extra reading, a little extra homework, I would recommend clicking on that get started and then go to build your first extension. And this is going to show you how to build your very first extension. We're going to go through this a bit today, but we can have this open so that we can see what's going on. The next thing that you want is your Poke API. That's just pokeapi.co. This page will tell you everything about the Pokemon API, all the documentation, how to make calls, and it even shows you an example of the sort of data that you're going to get as a response. And we're going to go through a bunch of this stuff as we build the project. But for today, that's all we need. And of course, MDN Web Docs, you can just Google search that and you'll find MDN Web Docs. You'll have information about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the good stuff, web APIs. So anything that you need here, you can just search and you'll usually find a lot of great resources. Another one that I do like also is W3 Schools, very similar to MDN Web Docs, just represented in a little bit different way. So some people might prefer one over the other. With that, let's get started on our application. Let me just go back here. Okay, so we have all of our resources. The last thing that we're going to need actually is VS Code installed on our machine. That's what I'm going to be using. I would recommend using VS Code because it is just a great IDE. And then, of course, you will need a Chromium browser, and that would mean either Chrome, like Google Chrome, or Brave. Those are two Chromium browsers. We need those because we're building a Chrome extension. So if you don't have a Chromium browser, go ahead and download either Chrome or Brave. They're both great. Brave just offers a bit more privacy. That's the main difference. So if you're into privacy, which you should be, I would recommend that one. Otherwise, Chrome works just fine. Okay, so let's actually get started with our setup. I'm going to pull this screen a little bit to the side here, and I have VS Code open. I'm going to shrink this down. You probably might not be able to see that well, but it's okay. I'm going to read it for you. Okay, so the very first thing that you're going to need to do is create a new folder on your machine, wherever you put your code, and call it Pokemon. And then you're going to open that folder in VS Code. So to do that, you would just do File. Once you're in VS Code, you want to go to File, Open Folder, and then find that folder that you just made called Pokemon and open that up. If you have done that, your screen should look pretty much like mine, very similar, where you see the word Pokemon up here and nothing inside that folder. Okay. This is going to be our project folder. It's going to be where we store all of the files inside of our project. And then when we're ready, we're actually going to upload this exact file into our Chrome browser. And that will be what Chrome reads when we actually open that Chrome extension that we're building. So with that, the next step is inside your Pokemon folder, create a new file called manifest.json. So if you recall, I mentioned that we need this in order to actually create a Chrome extension. That is the one differentiation between a regular website and a Chrome extension, is that we have this file. And inside of here, we're going to add a JSON object. And I'm just going to explain what that is for anybody who's brand new here. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And if you notice this little icon that I have, you may not have this because I believe this is coming from a special extension that I have installed, but you see the icon is curly braces. And the reason why is that this is a JSON file, and JavaScript Object Notation means it's literally just a JavaScript object, which we create by opening a pair of curly braces. There we go. We have a JSON object. Of course, there's nothing inside of here. And so we need to add the manifest, okay? The manifest is basically a file that tells the Chrome browser a little bit of information about this Chrome extension. It tells it things like which version of the Chrome extension is it using, the name, the version of like the Chrome extension build itself, a description, some icons. And then the other thing is it tells it the default icon and the default pop-up. And the pop-up is really this, right? So when we click this, we consider this whole container here a pop-up. The reason why is it just sits over top of any website that we're seeing, and that typically we call that a pop-up. And that's the language that is used by Chrome. Okay, so you'll see that when we actually write this manifest file in a second, and how we name some of the things that we do. Okay, so with that, so what actually goes in here? So all we have to do is go to the Chrome extension docs, and inside that file where I said, go to the get started, it's showing you how to create a hello world extension. And this would just be, to show off hello world. That's the most simple application that you can ever really build. So through this, it's showing you the most basic form of a manifest file. Okay, so there's a lot more that we can add in here, but for now, we're just going to use the most basic one. So you can go in here and you can copy and paste this, right? And I actually want you to do that. I want you to actually do everything. There's no, I'm not going to give you everything you need, but what you need to do is go to the developer tools, the documentation for the Chrome extensions, and just copy this, right? Because that's what you're going to do as a developer. You're going to find these resources on your own, and then we're going to paste this inside our manifest.json, and I just copied over those braces that we made. So you're just going to have exactly what you see here should be inside this file. So we have these curly braces, and then inside of that, we have key value pairs, okay? So the keys are what basically your Chrome browser is looking for, and then the information associated with that. So for this, we're using manifest version 3. Our name is hello extensions. Our description is base level extension. Our version is 1.0. And then we have this action with an object, and that tells us our default pop-up and our default icon. Okay, so that is the most basic form, but we have to change this, right? Because we're not creating hello extensions, we're creating the Pokedex. So we're going to rename some of this stuff. So here we're going to call this the Pokedex. Okay. In the description, we'll just say a collection of Pokemon cards. Okay. Version 1. Now, this is just the version of like our own Chrome extension. So if we were developing this and like putting it out there, like actually in production version, we may change this just to track so our users can see if, you know, what version they're using. But for us, we can just leave that as 1.0. And then the last part here, the action. So I want to just describe what these two are. So the first one is going to be the file that gets opened when we first open the Chrome extension. Now, one of the cool things is we can have multiple pages here. So, and of course, we can name these whatever we want. It doesn't have to be index.html because we're designating the root path, right, is going to be hello.html, which we don't have that file. We're going to create one, and I'm going to have you do it right now. It's going to be called popup.html. Okay, that's going to be our main HTML file that we're going to use to actually display all of our UI, so everything that somebody would see. And so we need to change our pop-up to reflect that. So this is going to be the file that gets opened when somebody clicks on the Chrome extension is going to be now popup.html because we just created that and we want to add that here. The second thing is our default icon. So if you notice, we have an icon here. And if I actually go to the Chrome extension, there's another icon here. We're going to do those in a minute. But for now, we can actually just name this icon.png. Okay. And so there you go. We have our manifest. We're going to add to this as we go, but for now, this is fine. We don't actually have an icon yet, but the next steps, we will actually do that. So before we get to adding the icon, the other thing that we can do is actually just we added our HTML, so we might as well add our CSS and JavaScript files, and we're going to name those the same, popup.css and popup.js. Okay, you'll notice that these are the file naming convention is different from a typical website. The reality is here, this could be anything you want. It doesn't have to be pop-up. It could be index. It could be spaghetti and meatballs.css. It doesn't matter as long as you designate what the default pop-up is in your manifest.json. This is the first file that will be loaded. And of course, our HTML file is going to point to our CSS and our JavaScript file as well. So as long as we have that right, we are good to go. So we have popup.html. It's going to open this file. Okay. The last thing that you're going to need is the assets folder. And that is going to be like our media assets. So that will be linked below this video. So you can just download that and bring it into your folder, just like I have. Okay, so I'm going to copy that in. And inside of here, we have just a few assets. We have our icon, which is a little Pikachu. We have the pokeball.png, which you'll see where that gets used in the next video. And then we have a README file. And what I'm going to have you do is actually pull this README file. We're just going to click and drag it into the open space at the bottom. And that's going to pull it out of the assets file and put it at our main top level of the folder. And that's typically where README files belong. But I did just want to create that for you so you can see what's inside of there. You obviously can add to this, but it's just showing you how to actually use the extension. Okay. And with that, you have set up your entire folder structure. The very last thing that we're going to do is actually just set up our HTML. And then we're going to get started on our HTML in the next video. So very, very simple. The easiest way to create some boilerplate for any HTML is to just make an exclamation point and use this Emmet abbreviation. Just press enter. And there you go. We have our HTML inside of there. And it's just a basic document. So at this point, the last thing that I want to do is show you actually how to have this show up as a actual Chrome extension. So we're going to write inside of this HTML, we're going to write the Pokedex, just so we have some content inside the body. And then what you need to do is open your extensions. Okay. And I actually have this extension installed already, but I'm going to install the new one that I've just done. So you need to open up your extensions. If you're not sure where this is, it's typically in your settings, and then like extensions here. It may be in different places on Chrome, but you're just going to open up your Chrome extensions, and you need to enable developer mode if you don't have that enabled already. And then you're going to click load unpacked, and you're going to find the file that you just made. Okay. Here's my Pokemon, and I'm going to select that. Oh, apologies. So we're running into an error here because our icon could not be found. I'm going to show you why that happened. Okay. So if you got that same error, that means you're doing the right thing. So if we go to our manifest, we have to designate the icon. And right now our icon, this would say that the icon is in our top level folder, which it's not. It's actually inside of our assets folder. So we need to change this to be assets/icon. And that's the correct path to that image. Okay, this one right here. So now you need to save that again. I have auto save set up. So if you don't, you should save that again. And then we can click load unpacked and find that folder again, select it. And there we go. We have our Pokedex. Now you should see that yours does not have an icon here. And that's normal. And I'll show you why when we get to another video. We're going to add other icons to our manifest. But for now, as long as you have this set up here, you should be good. If you click on in Brave, it's this little puzzle piece, but you want to see the Pokedex should show up here, and you should have the icon here. And you just want to make sure that you pin it, and I'm going to unpin my other one. So this now is our Chrome extension, and it says what's inside of our HTML, which is excellent. It says the Pokedex. And if you are here, congratulations, you have actually just built a Chrome extension, believe it or not. Congratulations. Awesome. Well, with that, we are going to finalize this part of the video. In the next video, we're going to build out the basic structure of the HTML and start building what we actually see up here. All right, so we're going to start building out this card one piece at a time. So I will see you in the next video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. Happy to help you.
Hey, what's up? This is Dan from CodeNoobs. If you guys enjoyed this video, you can get access to the full Pokedex Chrome Extension project by purchasing our new Web Dev Kickstarter course. The Kickstarter course includes instructional videos and code-alongs for covering everything you need to know about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as well as the full Pokedex Chrome Extension project, additional resources, and tips for next steps. If you're interested in becoming a web developer, you can purchase our new Kickstarter course at codenoobs.io/courses. And for a limited time, use the coupon code October to get 50% off. See down in the show notes for more details. Thanks a lot, guys.